Good morning, everyone. This is Russell Rucker, and I'm here for another constitutional talk. Last week I've seen other people put up videos and such complaining about some congressional legislation referring to voter ID or a proposal of doing that as a poll tax and citing the 24th. And I think that I'm going to go through the 24th a little bit here and explain a few things. Okay, so the 24th Amendment, the right of the citizens of the United States to vote in any primary or other election for president or vice president, for electors for president or vice president, or for senator or representative in Congress shall not be denied, abridged by the United States or any state by reason of a failure to pay any poll tax or other tax. Then it goes into section 2 where it says Congress shall have the power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. Having to pay a tax to vote is what they're talking about here, because during the Jim Crow era, they put up poll taxes to try to stop African American citizens from voting, to make it too expensive. But having to show an ID, having to get a birth certificate to show your citizenship is not a poll tax. No more than not allowing free transportation to the polls would be a poll tax. For instance, the idea of not having to pay for a bus ticket or have to pay for registration on a car to get to the polls, those aren't poll taxes. Generally, those are things you would have to do anyway through the course of doing normal business. A poll tax is different. And I just want to go to that part of logic here. That the idea that there are some changes and you have to prove who you are, cripes, you have to show ID to buy a 6-pack of beer. I mean, we're all used to showing our IDs all the time. There's no reason to have people voting for our representatives, our congressmen, not to show a voter ID. Now, there's been a discussion about whether the president or not wants to nationalize elections. Part of this is his using that phrase. But the actual idea is just to show ID and show proof of citizenship. That's not exactly nationalizing the elections. But the idea is to have all the states have to show an ID so that we actually know that our elections are secure. And the problem is who is in charge of the elections, because there is no national election. There's no such thing. When we're voting for president, we're voting in 50 different state elections. And we aren't voting for president, we're voting for that state's of electors, a Republican slate or a Democrat slate in today's world. And that slate of electors will vote on who becomes the president. Now, that's part of our electoral college. But let's go to Article 1, Section 4, and I am reading out of textualism and originalism in our constitutional republic, which does have our Constitution in it. The time, Section 4, Article 1, Section 4, the times, places, and manner of holding elections for senators and representatives shall be prescribed in each state by the legislature thereof. In other words, the state's legislatures have the right to decide the rules, have to decide how an election is going to be conducted. So in the case we're talking about voter ID, they would have to decide whether or not to make that a requirement. But it goes on. It says, but the Congress may at any time by law make or alter such regulations, except as to the places of choosing senators. So the one thing they can't do is they can't alter the place. They can't order you to go to a different state, for instance, for choosing elections. What this has to do with, though, is except for the places of choosing senators, because in the original Constitution, senators were chosen by the state's legislatures, and that's why that section is spelled out. And that is changed by amendment, so we can set that aside. But Congress may at any time by law make or alter such regulations. So there's nothing unconstitutional about the Congress ordering a citizen from showing an ID or showing proof of citizenship, any legitimate thing. They just can't force poll taxes on us, and they can't set different rules for one race or group of people than they do for another race or group of people. And that's really what we're talking about here when we're talking about elections and rules for elections. It's important that we have fair and equal elections. It also would be a good thing if we could get rid of gerrymandering. The idea of drawing maps to eliminate one party or the other. We have to have fair elections. Our Constitution is set up with all kinds of divisions and roadblocks throughout to try to make it equal enough, try to make it fair enough that one person will not achieve too much power. And Washington, in his farewell address, and I did cite some of it last week, but in another section of it, he warns about political parties, about the danger of political parties. And this is something we all have to think about from time to time, too, is even as a member of a political party, we should be thinking of ourselves as Americans first, not as Democrats or Republicans first. And our elected officials should be serving the state and the people from which they are supposed to be representing. This seems to be lost sometimes in the argument. And I just want you to understand that every change is not some great corruption, not some great evil. But we all have to have fair elections based in a fair manner, or no one will believe the results. And I think that's what's important here today. And we'll catch you next week on the next Constitutional Talk. Oh, by the way, folks, please subscribe, like my videos, and just to let you know, heading towards July 4th of this year, our 250th anniversary, I'm going to be putting out a book called Liberty. And this is really something to do for our 250th anniversary. And so I thought this would be prudent and right to offer something on the history of our great republic. We'll catch you next week on the next Constitutional Talk. Have a good day for now, folks. Bye.